A veil of secrecy shrouds the transition of power, and whispers of chaos echo through the halls of government. The recent scandal involving the president-elect's advisor, accused of selling positions, has only fueled the fire. As the Trump administration takes its positions, questions arise about the consequences of the events of January 6 and concerns about accountability hang overhead. Criticism has rained down on the post-January 6 transition, branding it as disorganized and chaotic. The transfer of power, at its core, should be a model of order and stability. Instead of the expected order and stability, the country faced chaos and disorientation, feeling deep anxiety. After the events at the Capitol, Trump's actions seemed particularly reckless. Instead of acknowledging responsibility, he reinforced his positions as if the attack had not happened, or worse, was justified. No significant effort was made to reassure the public or unite the nation. Trump remained silent, punctuated only by moments of spreading unfounded claims of election fraud. One of the participants in the storming used his body to break through, using a police shield against officers to enter the building. He sprayed a chemical irritant in the face of several officers and participated in the general onslaught of the crowd on the police. In total, he was in the Capitol, creating chaos, for more than 3 hours. Given his defiant behavior on January 6, his refusal to take responsibility, and the need to prevent further violations, the government suggests that the court sentence him to 168 months in prison. Justice Department prosecutor Ashley Acker prepared a sentencing memo which was agreed to by the Trump-appointed judge overseeing the case. As a result, the defendant received 12 years in prison, only slightly less than requested by the prosecution. However, less than a year later, he was free. Rachel Maddow not only stated the fact of the disorder but also explained why it is dangerous. Such a transition was not only shameful but threatening. In a disorganized country leadership, how can the public maintain faith in democracy? If the norms are ignored, what will keep future leaders from even more reprehensible actions? Maddow warned that such instability could be a harbinger of increased political violence, uncertainty, and division in society. In conclusion, she asked a chilling question: if Trump behaves in this way before taking office, what will happen if he returns? Discussing Trump's recent cabinet appointments, Rachel Maddow did not mince words. Candidates for high public office have sparked heated discussions as some of those appointed have turned out to be billionaires, raising concerns about potential conflicts of interest. In particular, the appointment of Howard Lutnick as Secretary of Commerce, given his deep ties to the financial sector, called into question his ability to make impartial decisions. A similar situation has developed with Jared Isaacman, a space technology entrepreneur whose appointment as NASA administrator has sparked debate about the boundaries between public interests and private gain. Critics argue that the lack of objections from lawmakers to these appointments indicates tacit agreement with a practice that is difficult to justify. The failure to provide reasonable answers to fundamental questions regarding these appointments is of concern. This issue takes on particular significance in light of the president's recent decision to pardon 21 people convicted of violent acts against law enforcement officers during the Capitol storming. The fact that some of these senators were personally affected by these events exacerbates the sense of shame and awkwardness they feel when asked about these controversial decisions. Rachel Maddow expressed concern about the commercialization of the presidential post, especially in the promotion of products related to the inauguration. In her opinion, such a practice diminishes the dignity of high rank. The sale of souvenirs not only raises ethical questions but also mixes personal commercial interests with the responsibilities of the president. Such a combination of roles can lead to a decline in public confidence and distract from the important tasks of governing the state. Maddow emphasized that such actions reflect a broad trend in which personal gain is put above public interest. The appointment of individuals with large business interests and the promotion of themed products create a risk of undermining the integrity of government institutions. These steps can lead to political decisions in favor of the wealthy and powerful, pushing the interests of ordinary citizens into the background. One move that sparked widespread surprise was President Trump's pardon of approximately 1,500 individuals involved in the January 6 Capitol events. This large-scale pardon affected prominent figures such as Enrique Tarrio of the Proud Boys and Stuart Rhodes of the Oath Keepers, who had previously been convicted of serious crimes. Observers are expressing concern over these recent pardons, believing they could weaken the principle of accountability. Such forgiveness of individuals whose actions were directed against the foundations of democracy could set a dangerous precedent. In effect, it could be perceived as a signal that politically motivated violence can go unpunished, which, in turn, could encourage radical elements to repeat similar actions in the future. Analysts share these concerns, warning that such decisions could lend a degree of legitimacy to political violence and embolden extremists. The absence of due punishment for unlawful actions may reinforce the belief that similar acts can be committed without any negative consequences. The importance of upholding the rule of law and order is emphasized. It is argued that pardoning those who sought to undermine the democratic election process poses a threat to the fundamental principles of the state. In the absence of accountability, the risk of repeated attacks on democratic institutions increases, which could lead to greater instability. Such pardons not only call into question justice but also show disrespect to those who suffered, including the law enforcement officers who defended the Capitol. The administration's decision to pardon individuals who assaulted law enforcement officers raises questions about the recognition and respect for those who uphold democratic principles. Reflections on potential scenarios are circulating in society, particularly in the context of an alternative political landscape. Discussions of resistance and struggle prompt consideration of practical steps that each citizen can take. In situations where change occurs gradually, it is important to demonstrate active civic engagement, support dialogue with others, and appeal to elected representatives with demands. It is essential to recognize that the actions of politicians have a direct impact on the lives of every individual. Despite statements of support for certain initiatives, it is important to remember the real consequences of the decisions being made. Addressing his constituents, one politician expressed solidarity with their fatigue and disillusionment, acknowledging that the past period has been a difficult ordeal. He emphasized the importance of self-reflection and finding ways to persuade, as the consequences were predictable. In his address, he urged people to remain focused, ignore distractions, and surround themselves with like-minded individuals who understand what is happening. As an example, he cited Rachel Maddow's analysis of the pardons issued by Trump, which revealed a deeper problem: the glorification of the events of January 6th. Instead of condemning the violence, Trump and his supporters portrayed the rioters as heroes, giving them standing ovations at political events. Maddow emphasized that such an attitude is not only wrong but also dangerous because justifying violence leads to its acceptance in society. Justifying the storming of the Capitol creates a dangerous precedent, opening the way for similar events to happen again in the future. Individual political figures, by publicly supporting the rioters and presenting them not as criminals but as patriots, undermine the foundations of law and order. This approach blurs the line between legitimate protest and political violence, creating the impression that the latter may be permissible if it serves a particular political goal. Rachel Maddow focused on the long-term consequences for national unity. Disagreements in the assessment of the attempted coup, when one part of society considers it an act of patriotism, make it difficult to move forward. She emphasized that democracy functions only on the condition of mutual respect for election results. Disregarding this principle threatens the democratic system itself. Of particular note is the case of Ashley Aker, a prosecutor with the U.S. Department of Justice who, among her last actions in office, filed documents to dismiss charges against individuals involved in the January 6th events in cases she had worked on for years. The basis for this decision was the pardon of these individuals by Donald Trump. After more than 7 years as a federal prosecutor and involvement in numerous cases related to January 6th, Ashley Aker left the U.S. Department of Justice. She is appearing on television tonight for the first time to give an interview after her departure from public service. Ms. Akers honored us with her presence, for which she is deeply appreciated. After 7 years with the Department of Justice, she said her decision to leave was not spontaneous. Circumstances unfolded unexpectedly. She shared her thoughts on working on numerous cases related to the events of January 6th. She may have had more trials on the matter than any other prosecutor in the department. What was it like to see all that work, all those cases, convictions, and sentences overturned by the president? Ms. Akers admitted it was a terrible experience. She believes the pardons, which have caused so much controversy, are disturbing for a number of reasons. First and foremost, they condone the violence that prosecutors on her team have described in court for years. The pardons effectively legitimize these actions. The January 6th events went beyond ordinary violence. Seasoned police officers whose testimony had been heard in courtrooms for years admitted that day was the worst of their careers. At that moment, they weren't sure if they would see their families again. According to them, what was happening resembled a scene from a medieval battle. This development not only justifies violence against law enforcement officials but also undermines the very foundations of the rule of law. Judges have repeatedly emphasized that the peaceful transfer of power is the cornerstone of a democratic society. The crimes committed on January 6 and subsequently pardoned directly violated this fundamental principle. The warning was clear: it's not just about the events of January 6, but also about their potential consequences. If leaders do not condemn political violence, similar attacks on democracy may recur. And while the prospect of mass pardons for January 6 participants by Trump has sparked widespread public outcry, Maddow drew attention to another worrying trend. The decision to pardon protesters has resonated widely in society, especially since those released include individuals posing a serious threat. In particular, this concerns the release of Stuart Rhodes, founder of the Oath Keepers, and Enrique Tarrio, leader of the Proud Boys, both of whom were convicted of seditious conspiracy, that is, for organizing actions against the government of the United States. Maddow rightly questions the logic of such pardons, emphasizing that the release of extremist group leaders involved in the events at the Capitol could have far-reaching consequences. In her opinion, this is not only a matter of justice but also of public safety, as it is not about the spontaneous actions of protesters but about a planned attempt at rebellion. Drawing on historical precedents, Maddow notes that released extremist group leaders often return to their activities, gaining even greater influence. She fears that Rhodes and Tarrio's return to leading their organizations could destabilize the situation in the country. Maddow suggests that the decision to pardon could be seen as encouraging extremist activity, and the main question remains who will be held accountable for the possible consequences of such a move. If the highest official in the state remains unaccountable for actions undermining democratic foundations, a legitimate question arises: what will prevent future leaders from even more serious abuses of power? Rachel Maddow concluded her reflections with a disturbing prediction, emphasizing that the stakes are high not only in the context of past events, but also in light of the challenges facing American society. Will the country be able to withstand such threats in the future? Robert De Niro, known for his staunch criticism of Donald Trump, has repeatedly characterized the former president as a gangster, hinting that his actions are dictated by a criminal mindset. In one of his interviews, De Niro stated that Trump acts like a member of the mafia, expressing doubt that even members of the criminal world would approve of his actions. The image of Trump as a gangster, created by De Niro, carries significant cultural weight. As an actor who rose to fame through roles in iconic gangster films, his comparison deeply resonates with viewers familiar with such archetypes. Such a characterization implies that Trump's actions are dictated by personal gain and disregard the interests of the nation. In the context of the current political situation, the question arises: is democracy really under threat in the upcoming elections? According to many, the answer is yes. Democracy is certainly a valuable achievement, but is often taken for granted by citizens. Morality is a concept that is not always understood in society, often being taken for granted. This is the dividing line between good and evil, a kind of compass pointing the direction of our actions. And when someone systematically violates moral norms, a legitimate question arises about their humanity. Such actions, like carefully planned provocations, cause a storm of emotions and make one wonder about the motives driving this person. The influence of celebrities on public opinion is a topic for discussion. Some unconditionally accept their point of view, while others are skeptical of it, believing that famous people lack expertise in political matters. Nevertheless, the participation of figures like Robert De Niro in political life draws the attention of a wide audience to important problems, bringing information to those who usually remain outside the reach of traditional political channels. Rachel Maddow emphasizes the importance of a critical look at the actions of those in power. In a democratic society, leaders serve the people, not vice versa. The lack of control over the president's decisions can be the beginning of the destruction of democratic principles, so vigilance and willingness to ask questions are the key to preserving freedom and justice. Rachel Maddow emphasized that society has the right and even the obligation to demand explanations regarding pardons, political decisions, and appointments. She paid special attention to the ethical and legal aspects of the pardons issued by Donald Trump. Granting pardons to hundreds of people involved in the events of January 6 was not just a matter of debate but also an unprecedented step in history. Maddow expressed concern that if the president has the ability to nullify crimes against democratic principles with one decision, what deterrence will prevent future leaders from committing even more serious abuses of power? If such actions are not properly assessed and criticized, this could set a dangerous precedent that could undermine the foundations of the rule of law. She noted that many feel a deep sense of disgust and powerlessness when faced with the need to accept a situation without being able to say anything that would not cause internal protest and seem morally unacceptable. This feeling of impossibility to find a rational or truthful explanation for the fact that Trump opened the prison doors to more than 2,000 people serving sentences raises serious concerns about the future of justice and democracy. The importance of open discussion in society cannot be overstated. Rachel Maddow urges citizens of the United States to take an active position, ceasing to be mere bystanders. Critical analysis of the actions of the president, regardless of his party affiliation, is a manifestation of civic responsibility. Whether Republican or Democrat, every leader must be prepared for their decisions to be carefully examined, discussed, and, if necessary, challenged. Maddow concludes her speech with a powerful appeal: democracy cannot exist in automatic mode, it requires constant attention and vigilance. If leaders are not held accountable, abuse of power becomes inevitable. The problem is not only in the actions of a specific president, such as Trump, but also in what could happen if future leaders feel impunity and go even further. In conclusion, readers are invited to share their opinions in the comments section, as well as to like and subscribe to the channel for more information. At the end of the video, it is suggested to watch other materials on the topic.